Do you ever ask yourself the question, is the gospel of Jesus Christ enough? Is there something that I need to do to add to his work? Because it doesn't seem right or reasonable that one man's death, historically, 2,000 years ago, gets me and everybody who believes an eternal salvation with God. It doesn't make sense. Well, there's a good question to ask, and I'm hoping that this story today will help answer that question. It's a story of when Jesus' disciples came back to him after ministering. They've been out, they've done some amazing things, and Jesus wants them to have a time of rest. So he says, let's get in the boat, we're going to go up the coast, and we're going to find a very desolate place, and there we're just going to have some time, just us on our own. But the crowd, there's always a crowd, they get to hear about it. And what they do is that they run ahead. They know where they're going. They run ahead. So by the time they get out of the boat, there is a crowd of 5,000 people waiting for them. Jesus could say to them, look, you people are really getting on my nerves. Just go away. But Jesus doesn't do that. We might do that. He doesn't. And so he says, I have compassion on these people. He teaches them many things. He heals all their sicknesses, so much so that they're there for such a large part of the day that the people start to get hungry. He's not just fed their minds and their bodies, he now wants to feed them. And so he says to the disciples, we need to give these people something to eat. And the disciples say to him, well, this is a desolate place. We need to send the people away that they can go home and get some food. And he says, no, you feed them. So they look around and they ask if anyone's got any food. And all they come up with is one boy who has 5 loaves and 2 fish. Now, I don't know quite how big these loaves were, but I imagine they were something this kind of size. Okay, that would be a regular size, I reckon. He had 5 of those and 2 fish. Jesus takes the loaves and fish, he gives thanks, he breaks them, he gives them to the disciples, who then distribute the bread and the fish to this crowd of 5,000. Well, I looked at this and I thought, one loaf would feed 1,000 people. That means that this much would feed 100 people. It means this much would feed 10 people. And it means that each person, wait for it, was going to get this much. Now, if you went home today hungry and said to your mum, what's for lunch? And she said, bread and fish. And you said, whoa, I love bread and fish. And she put that much bread and that much fish on your plate, I can pretty much guarantee that you would not be satisfied with that. You would not be filled. And yet, when the food is distributed, the Bible says that every single person is satisfied. Every single person is filled. So much so that the disciples go round afterwards with baskets to go and collect the leftovers. Now, I'm not talking baskets like this. I'm talking probably baskets bigger than this, fishing baskets that they would have had with them. They go out and they fill 12 of these baskets with leftovers, way, way more than they had to begin with. How did they do that? Well, different people have got different ideas. Some people think, well, it's possible that everybody just really brought their secret backpacks and they had their own lunches with them. But the disciples said nobody's got any food. Other people think to themselves, well, maybe there was the secret fish and bread shop somewhere just round the corner. But again, the disciples had said to the people, no, you have to go away to get the food because there's none here. And some people even think that maybe these were really big fish. But of course, the boy wouldn't have been able to carry fish like that. What happened? It was a miracle. It reminds us that Jesus is God and Jesus has the power to make something out of nothing. He can take a tiny amount and multiply it to the degree that every single person is not only satisfied, they can't eat any more, and there is so much left over. It's an incredible thing what Jesus is able to do. The Bible says that the people were arranged in rows of 50s and 100s. And can you imagine you're hungry, it's the end of the day, you're sitting in this row, you've heard there's a little bit of food, and you're watching it come along. And you think it's going to run out before it gets to me. But not only does it arrives in such abundance that you have more than you know what to do with. It's a picture of what Jesus does with the gospel. You see, the gospel might seem an insignificant thing. It might seem a thing that is easy to ignore, easy to forget, something that we can dismiss, but it's not. The gospel of Jesus Christ is an amazing thing because that one act is enough to give salvation to all who believe. It's an amazing thing what Jesus was able to do. You know, on that day, Jesus fed 5,000. He could have fed 5 million because the gospel of Jesus Christ is able to feed and satisfy and fill every single person who believes. Billions of people will stand before God without having to add anything to it because they put their trust alone in Jesus Christ. I love what Paul says when he says, I am not ashamed of the gospel. Why? Because it is the power of God unto salvation for all who believe. That's the gospel. And that's why it's so important that we just do that one simple thing without adding to it. We believe in the work that Jesus Christ did on the cross for the eternal salvation of our souls.